ladies and gentlemen. Next up, the winner of the health category. This is Conrad Gargat, which is now merged with Architectus and Wardle. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you very much. My name's Megan Dwyer. I'm a partner at Wardle, previously John Wardle Architects. You may know us better by that name. I'm here to tell you something about the Victorian Heart Hospital. Before I do that, I'll just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which the building stands, the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. The Victorian Heart Hospital is the first hospital dedicated to cardiac care in the Southern Hemisphere. There's a very significant need for this in my country. 1 in 4 deaths, in fact, are associated with cardiovascular disease. The building is home to a truly remarkable team of clinicians and researchers, and around 10 years ago, in a world first, they implanted the first replacement heart valve without open heart surgery. So they went in through an artery and unfurled the valve when it was in the correct position. So a truly remarkable team, and on the back of that achievement, they in fact advocated for this building. So the building's located on the Monash University campus, which is about 45 minutes from the Melbourne CBD, so it's out in the suburbs. You can see here it's in located on quite a green site, and if I show you the campus plan, you can see here that it's set to one side of the campus and surrounded by green open space. It's at the centre of what is emerging to be quite a significant biomedical research precinct, and you can see here too that there are the patients and staff have access to an exercise loop that passes around the sports fields and into a remnant wetland. So very early in the design stages, we appreciated this unique opportunity to really integrate the hospital with landscape, and so in fact we set the building around this circular courtyard, which in fact is central to the configuration of the building. You can see in this slide that the circular courtyard sits at the centre of a rectangular floor plan, and all of the public circulation spaces in the building are pressed hard against this circular edge, and this circular edge in turn is in contrast to the otherwise very functional and rectilinear planning of a rectangular floor plate. You can see here the stack. What I'll point out to you is at ground, we have emergency and imaging. Level 1, we have ambulatory services. Level 4 is a floor entirely dedicated to research. Level 4 and 5 are clinical, and then 6, 7 and 8 are inpatient rooms. Here is the ground floor plan, and you can see again, that we're set in natural landscape. You can see the curved courtyard, and at the bottom edge of the slide, you can see the patient arrival point, and there's another curved form there that is sheltered and protected, and patients can be dropped off directly at the front door. So that view this time in a photograph. I do have another photograph that shows beautifully established landscape, but that wasn't ready at the time we put this together. But you can see here the arrival point. Patient can be dropped off at the front door, cars will loop around and then go into a basement car park, so we've been very careful to keep the foreground of the hospital as natural as possible. When we enter into through the front door, the interior spaces are very light and bright, and in fact you do get a view right through to that courtyard immediately upon arriving in the front door. And so this idea of connecting to landscape, again, is very significant to the way that we've configured the interior, not just at ground floor, but at every level. So again, very light, bright interiors. This is a staff area that has an outlook into that curved courtyard. The ends of corridors also have these views and connections to natural landscape from the lift lobbies and the circulation spaces also. As I mentioned, level 3 is dedicated to research, so we have a large number of laboratory spaces. We also have people specialising in medtech, so medical devices that are being designed to be inserted and planted into patients. We have a seminar space in this, at this level, and in fact there is undergraduate teaching in these spaces too, so we sort of have the whole innovation ecology in this, or ecosystem in this building, from learning, teaching through to research and clinical practice. At the level above, we have a series of catheter laboratories. These are laboratories that are necessarily light-locked. They're sort of low invasive procedures that are done on a sedated patient, a patient who is actually still awake, and the imaging equipment is critical to these treatments, and so this space is necessarily light-locked. But as we come out of those spaces, we come into we come into the recovery spaces that are flooded with natural daylight. The operating theatres have windows. Sounds simple, but it is not particularly common at all. These operations that are performed in these spaces can take the better part of a day, and so these windows allow the clinical team to stay connected with the cycle of the day. The patient rooms are in the top levels of the building. They have a very warm palette. We've selected chilled beams as they're a very quiet way of conditioning the environment. Each of these rooms can be set up as a intensive care unit, so we're minimising the movement of patients through the building. And again, we have views out across sports fields and towards the mountain ranges. The middle levels of the building are surrounded by this screen. It's a weathering steel material that we've folded to shape the, like an electrocardiogram readout. So it's the sort of zigzag pattern that follows the heartbeat. We've used one or two simple panels and rotated them and put them in different combinations to get a high degree of variation. And the material spans from floor slab to floor slab, so in fact it's a very material efficient system. The facades generally are highly insulated and airtight to passive design principles, although I do say that we're not certified. And the two materials we think work particularly well together to break down the mass, but also they sit beautifully against this deep olive green landscape. You can see here again the way that the patient rooms sit above the main building. And here we have the entry. And I'll just play a video that will run for just a little over 3 minutes.
No one wants to be in a hospital, but when the patients do arrive here, they are completely blown away by the environment.
We started this design journey thinking about how the built environment can shape people's lives.
So what makes this building unique is that it is the Southern Hemisphere's first standalone heart hospital, located on Monash University's Clayton campus. It is a research building, but it's also a clinical building.
It has 196 beds, an emergency department.
And integrates teaching, research, and at the forefront healthcare for patients with cardiac disease.
Students can observe care being given and also participate in research.
Good design principles improves patients' well-being, not only for their recovery rate, but also the reliance on medication. So the brief allowed us to work with the clinicians to challenge the traditional design of a building. This building has the patients at the front and center of the design process, but also those clinicians and the researchers as well.
The staff enjoy working in the facility, they enjoy the environment. We have our lowest sick leave rate that we have ever had in our cardiac program across Monash Health, and that keeps decreasing every month.
So the podium of the building is shrouded in a perforated weathered steel screen. That acts as a device for glare control, but also enables building occupants to enjoy views out. The geometry of the folds are a reference to the heart monitors that are used for clinical care.
patients have the opportunity to connect with the environment. We've enabled the courtyard to have connectivity so that patients who are cardiac monitored can go outside, which is very unique, and walk around with their families and get some fresh air and natural light.
Traditionally, rehab for the heart is delivered in the gym. In this building, the circular courtyard and the sports field allows the engagement with the elements.
The intensive care has that connectivity with the outside. You can see gum trees throughout every window, which is so important for the families and the transition of day to night for patients who often get disorientated in that environment.
There's nothing worse than being in a deep footprint with no access to natural light. There's always access to long corridors which have windows or pause points at the end which engage with the elements, with the views to the ranges but also the views to the sports fields.
The building is sited in a way to preserve as much of the existing vegetation and landscape as possible. At the south is the Matheson tree, which is a 400 to 500-year-old gum tree that's a remnant of the original Indigenous landscape.
The staff love working here, and the spaces are so flexible and big and open that you don't get large crowds of patients waiting for appointments in the clinics as traditionally seen in a hospital.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah, I would like, maybe you could comment, in this project is happening exactly the opposite, like in the previous project, because at some point you have done the facade that is very, I would say, metallic, and is with this steel, I don't know if this is curtain steel, but looks like at some moment looks a bit, well, complex color. Is not clean, I would say, but then the interior is completely clean, rational, etc. So why you have decided to use this material for the outside of the buildings for an hospital that, in fact, in general, hospitals must look like clean and thin and so on, yeah?
Yes, very good question. I think there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, we really did, at the outset, want to make this a building that was kind to people. And we feel that often that sort of very white, clean, clinical mode, if you like, doesn't actually achieve that. And so we wanted to use a very warm palette. We think that those beautiful earthy colours contrast beautifully with that green landscape. And in Australia in particular, it's quite unusual to have a hospital that's in the round and in a natural setting, so we really did want to amplify that difference. And we're very conscious that the facade of a building like this contributes about 15 to 20% of embodied energy, and so we did want to select materials that were very low in embodied energy, and so the terracotta material is very low in embodied carbon, and the steel, I guess, is an option or an alternative to, say, aluminium, which is, of course, very high in embodied energy. So there's a number of considerations. I think with this is a 70,000 square metre building, and these big hospitals are kind of tough beasts in a way that have very many pragmatic requirements, and so there's only a few moves that you can really make that sit within the budget and meet all of the practical functional requirements, and to us materiality was one of those key decisions that we could make.
Thank you.
Very good presentation, thank you very much. Just a few points. I quite like the way you form the building, although it's rectangular, you've got the courtyard. But as a hospital, you've got a number of penetrations in terms of, I think one of your first slides shows, you know, accident, emergency, you know, all the various penetrations, and the way you've changed the scale of those. So it's almost as if you need to go to the place once, then you know exactly where you need to go to. which I think is quite, for a hospital, that's very important, by having the front entrance, but you also have the emerging entrance. And I think that, to me, is quite refreshing to see, really, because a lot of hospitals are bland, and then you're going to have this big entrance, and it's always difficult to find all the other entrances. The other thing I find, which I find quite interesting, was the fact I got this semicircular courtyard on the side of the building that goes up to level 6, and then everything changes at level 6. And can you just explain a bit how you mitigate that change, and how those spaces are used? Do you have balconies or spaces people can see into there?
Yeah. In early design stage, we went through a number of iterations. We looked at lower, flatter buildings, different ways of configuring all of these functional requirements. And where we arrived at is, in fact, is quite a compact form that allows a very efficient movement of various hospital users, clinicians, patients through the building. Those clinical floors really need to be big, open floor plates, and there was a strong preference to have, for example, all of the operating theatres on one floor. Okay. And so that kind of set the dimension of that rectangle. And then when you get to the patient rooms, so the top 3 levels are all patient rooms. When you get up there, you know, every patient room wants to benefit from a window and an outlook. And so we really did have to reconsider the building form at those upper levels.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. A very beautiful scheme. There was a picture of the playing field. Was that on a roof or on the ground?
Well, they're on natural ground. So the campus kind of terraces down toward the Heart Hospital. So they're actually on natural ground. There is a project in mind to put a car park beneath them. So that might be something that the university looks at in the coming years.
Okay, yes. Yeah. I thought for Australia, a view over bushland or a view over sport, you've covered everything there, I think.
Yes, yeah. Very fortunate to have that site to work with. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it looked every aspect very, very well considered, very accomplished in the way everything was put together. And I think all those moves for natural light into areas which are normally dark is a great thing to do.
Thank you.
I'm intrigued by the presentation. It's very matter-of-fact, and your colleagues who come on the movie are very matter-of-fact, and it's a hospital, and therefore it's very good and matter-of-fact. I have seen several of your firm's buildings, and I'm a great admirer of the best of them. And I think what was intriguing was if you were looking carefully, not listening to the chat, but looking carefully, there were a lot of tectonics. And your firm is particularly good on interior spaces. I've experienced them at length. And you could see that there were some really, really very good interior spaces, and you didn't talk about them. And they weren't really, they were sort of passed by as if, yes, by the way, we're moving down this corridor. And I find maybe it's a sort of cultural issue that, you know, being a hospital, and we've all got to be good people here, and therefore we explain sort of matter-of-fact things. And actually, it's a fucking good building, but we're not going to say that, and we're not going to draw attention to things that actually make it a rather special building. So I think it's intriguing as a present. It's not you personally, but it's intriguing the pitch that now it seems that one has to give, not to talk about the actual spatial experience of the building, but of the things you can tick off as sensible moves. Yeah. And I have a certain sadness about this, that you're almost embarrassed to admit that it's a good and interesting building. Where it's, you know, in the end, one will draw one's own conclusions about the building, but I'm intrigued in these circumstances how people present, not you personally, but how it is seen that presentation should prioritize certain things. So it's a cri de coeur in a way.
It's a cri de coeur. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.